Hi, guys. Welcome to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. This is Vevna Forrow. Yeah, let's get started. Okay, guys. So on the past podcast episode, I was covering mobile and web magazine reader applications, places for online and digital magazines, for those who like to read from their mobile, on their laptop, computer, and so forth. I gave a list of some I'm familiar with, have tried or reached out to, and others, too, that I haven't tried in terms of, paywall subscription plugins and integrations, particularly for WordPress. But I'm sure other, website service providers, that you may use for facilitating your site on the back end have plugins or store to, set up some sort of membership paywall system to support, print and digital subscriptions. A lot of different ways and methods and apps and services out there do so. You just got to do research. And so listen back to that. I hope that helps you. I want to quickly add one thing back from that episode that I didn't mention. So with caffeine, that's one, Dippy Lit Mag had gotten into. There are, no location restrictions with that. Again, caffeine's based in France. They have readers, in the UK, Canada, I believe, and various parts of Europe. If you're using the app, I was able to write from the US. At the time, I was, just choosing the country or region that had my preferred language, right, English in it, and choosing the closest country region to me, and, just using their trial and initially to see what it looks like for, readers and flipping through, and you get a month trial, and that's subject to change right over time. But yeah, it was still cool. So neat that a lot of places don't have location restrictions, but some do. So check the ones I mentioned out, and For this episode, I want to cover something I mentioned in terms of the lit mag world, and even, for presses. And I think this could, it applies, I guess, this topic to names in general, for businesses, for organizations, companies, publishing houses, etc. Names are so important, right? The name you create for, a publication or a house or a literary magazine, right? That's how others are going to remember you, by that name, or, say they were published in this lit mag or journal, in this one, right? So, something that, magazines do, businesses, even restaurants, companies that we know in the world all over, right? They undergo trademark registration. If you don't know what that is, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to read the definition for you of what a trademark is. Again, beforehand, I just wanted to state, on this episode, I'm not a legal expert. You shouldn't, listen to me for, legal advice. This is just me sharing my thoughts and experiences and things I've, gone through. And So I'm going to quote this off of the USPTO website. That's the United States Patent and Trademark Service. So quoting this again, a trademark can be any word, phrase, symbol, design, or a combination of these things that identifies your goods or services. Is how customers recognize you in the marketplace and distinguish you from your competitors. The word trademark can refer to both trademarks and service marks. A trademark is used for goods, while a service mark is used for services. So a trademark, it says here, identifies the source of your goods or services, provides legal protection for your brand, helps you guard against counterfeiting and fraud. So it typically, a trademark, applies to, the specific, service, you're doing, goods or services. In our case, the literary arts world, right, that would be publication, I guess, the umbrella publication, So, it's the trademark process. So let me share something. So, have I undergone, you're probably wondering, have I undergone a trademark process before? And yes, I actually have, with a project outside of, Dippity and other stuff. This was more of a personal, it was more of a personal project that I had started, a couple years ago. And I went through the trademark process. I actually went through I think a fishy service, but it still, was able to go through the process. I just didn't have a really good experience with, there are some places that help you with that outside of the USPTO, but I think it's best to go directly, on, the site and to file an application, find and, consult even with a legal expert, a trusted legal expert, when doing anything, in the legal world, or, it can be messy, sometimes, and things like that. And you want to be very cautious. So yeah, I went through the process. There's like a filing fee. There are some additional fees when you get started. I think it was a couple $100 when I went through it. Probably like initially that was $300. And then there's like, to complete the process, it can be, I think they were showing in the letter it got from New York, it was like, I think it was from New York, $1,000. So, yeah. And then it ranges, I think, it depends on, like, there can be additional fees and stuff, but depending upon, what you're filing, for trademark wise and all of that. But it can be, between $1,000 and $2,000, on average, I think, like the entire process. And yeah, that's kind of costly. So whether or not you should trademark something, I would approach it this way and think about it. So are you 100% certain that you are going to use that name? Are you going to, use it for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Is it one you're absolutely set on and you're going to use for your publication series, your publishing house, your literary magazine, press, or, you want to make sure, because when you go through the process, right, that's a lot of money. For some it may not be, but I think that is, anything that gets in the 1,000 range, that is absolutely quite a bit. Even the hundreds, it's lit mags and journals don't have a lot of money to work with typically, so you want to be absolutely certain it's something you want to do. And I think, let's see, I'm going to go out to the USPTO site here. So there's like the tmsearch.uspto.gov site. And let's just search here out of curiosity. I'm going to type literary magazine in the USPTO database search, literary magazine. Let's see how many results show up. Oh my God. So 24,029 results for literary magazine. Now, those aren't all registered trademarks at all. There's a large, they track also every place that's ever abandoned their trademark, or, they have it as like the status is dead or alive trademark in there. So there's like registered, pending, canceled, abandoned. There are a lot of abandoned ones, a lot of ones, that are just, never, they file or they abandon it. I think there's also things you have to do to maintain your trademark and stuff. And I'm not aware of all of that additional process after, registration. For that personal project I did, before, a little bit before, or it was around the same time, I think, as the Hummingbird Blink podcast. Well, anyways, I did, go through the process. I was near the end of it, and it can take, within a year or a bit longer than a year to complete the whole process of a trademark. So, yeah. And there are a lot of abandoned ones in here, but let's see how many are active here. Let's get rid of all the pending, and let's just do registered and pending ones. So yeah, after removing the canceled and abandoned ones, there's about 3,383 results in here. So you can see all of the names that are trademark registered and everything. There's quite a lot. I believe, I saw, you can typically tell some literary arts magazines, journals, they have TM, in their name, or even some places. I've even seen, some podcasts trademark their name, anything, artist names and stuff. Others want, legal protection over their name because it's something they want to build a business around, or brand even, or sometimes, some people license names or, things like that. And anyways, 3,383 results for live, registered, and pending literary magazine names. Obviously, not every lit mag or journal, uses specifically literary magazine. I think when I was searching some other ones that I knew, like Rattle and a few others, I saw R Rattle was in the name field, or there's a thing called the word mark and things like that. So look at that, dig around, when you're choosing the name of your lit mag or journal or press, or whatever you're creating, it could be a small business or something else in addition to your lit mag or journal, who knows, you want to do some research. You want to scour the web, check social media, check Instagram, Facebook, Substack, check YouTube, check the USPTO or your, wherever you're based, the trademark search, right? For the USPTO, right, this applies to, the US, right? So I'm covering this, but I'm sure, the process is probably a little bit different maybe in other, parts of the world, or a bit, or maybe the same. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. But of course, there are trademarks processes you can do. There's, federal, state level. I think there's like common law. There's a lot of terminology in the trademark world and legal world. So I'm not aware of all of that stuff, but obviously you can do research on it and read more on the USPTO site. And you really want to, check. You want to double check, no one's using that name currently, because you don't want to, I think it's just polite not to step on anyone's toes and use if you're using the same identical name as a place that's been around, 5, 10, 15 years, that's obviously going to raise eyebrows. It's going to, cause, some alarm to them. And this actually comes up from time to time. I was on an email the other day. I'm not sure, I was on their mailing list. Maybe they alerted every one of their subscribers that someone else, I'm not going to give names, but someone else was using this. It was one of the magazines, I believe, in my home state, actually, that I follow pretty closely. So someone else was using the same identical name as them and started to, and they had filed a while back, completed their trademark registration process and everything. So what happens, if someone's doing that and using the same identical name and in the same space, right, as publication and a series and everything for writers, and, there's cease and desist letters, and legal, sometimes there's, in the world in general, businesses and stuff, if you do a Google search on trademark lawsuits or name lawsuits, there's a lot. So you want to be careful when you're naming anything, and you're using a name. You want to ensure that, your domain name is not taken already. You want to be very careful about that. Really search, all the places you use, if you're someone who uses social media a lot, check the handles used, check, URLs that are, taken and stuff like that. And be cautious about that. Yeah, there are some similar named magazines out there in the world and stuff. For example, right, Dippity is short for serendipity. There are some serendipity, like I think home lifestyle magazines. There's another literary arts online publication it came across recently that started up, I think this year, or it could have been, I could be wrong, Serendipity Archives, and check them out too. They're really, really awesome. Always trying to give shout outs to places to check out. So again, you can check show subs, the directories I mentioned, poets and writers, and I think that was episode 2 or one of the first 5 episodes in this podcast of how to find, literary magazines and journals to submit to. You can search in those directories for names. Not all of them are listed in there. That's why you want to double check, social media, Substack, search, other places, Medium even, to make sure that, in those spaces. I think it just causes confusion when, more than one publication is using a very identical or nearly similar name. I think, that's hard. And you want to be careful, again, because some do, some editors, some founders do register a trademark, and you have to be careful because they can take legal action against you. They can, do cease and desist letters, and consult a lawyer or something so you stop using the name. And there's a thing called first use basis. Who's used the name first, who's used it the longest, right? That is a factor taken into consideration. There are probably some other stuff I didn't mention and left out. You can, of course, read more on the whole trademark registration process. I would just say be very careful. There's a lot of scams out there in terms of trademark filing and registration. I had a very poor experience because I had ended up, for this personal project I did, outside of my literary magazine stuff, it was something tied to a name I created that had some personal meaning. But I saw the cost associated with that, and I didn't, with combined with other things happening in my life, and family's health and, things like that, I decided to drop the process at the time for that other name I was, filing for. So again, I had a poor experience with my trademark registration process, because I went through this company, I don't remember what they were called, but they did do they did go through the application process. I started using the little TM symbol because I was further along. I just didn't end up, coughing up the $1,000-something to complete the process, or it'd be more than that, probably a little bit more. It was 1,000-something, I think. Yeah, it was like, oh, my eyebrows were like, oh, that's a lot. So whatever you do, just be very careful. A lot of con artists there, things like that, and companies that are claiming that they'll help you do the trademark process and stuff. I went through a company that did help me get the filing. I saw that I was in the USPTO for that particular name. But that one, for that project, I didn't end up going through with it. So, yeah. So, again, there are, copyright protections and stuff. I think in terms of trademarks, processes, not a lot of literary magazines and journals, end up going through with the process, because then they find out about, all the fees associated with it, and then they said, maybe not, or they have other reasons why they abandoned it or didn't maintain their, trademark, filing process or go through with it. Everyone has a different reason. So again, I mentioned, just searching the database. I don't know if that's completely accurate, but that's what was showing up in the results. If you go out there, do some searching, you'll find, you can look up, that and, literary magazine, go do some research on trademark, process. I'd recommend, it helps, listening to others' experiences, on YouTube or something to learn more about it. And I would recommend going straight to, if you're based in the U.S., the USPTO.gov site, and, looking it over. There are things where they cover, attorney, do you need an attorney, things like that. It covers questions like that and stuff. Everyone has, they assigned me someone too when I went through the trademark process. And the thing that was difficult for me, I would say, I personally had told them, I'm not going forward with it. Please, cancel it. I think that was never relayed, no matter how many times I notified them. And then I kept getting letters sent to my house about it. And then eventually they just, finally stopped. But, so I really tried, to, do that. But I didn't want to for that particular name or project I was working on. It was a personal one. So, yeah. I would definitely, recommend, consulting someone, a legal expert about it. You want to be careful, of course. A lot of scams, a lot of fraud happening in the world. It keeps escalating, things like that. So you want to be very cautious on, look at their site. They have a lot of online tools, and they have a trademark center, to file a new trademark application, it looks like, on their site. So yeah, I would just recommend starting on their site if you're interested in checking out more about trademark registration. I don't know what it's like for other countries, in terms of, trademark registration and stuff. That's something I may, research and stuff. Obviously, again, I mentioned, when you file a trademark, right, in the place you are, U.S.-based trademark, right, there are, again, ways to do a worldwide, I think, brands and companies have probably worldwide trademark stuff that they do. I don't know about that. But, yeah, so there are, probably, I think there's, France has a trademark site, probably Italy, different, each country, I think they have trademark sites or countries and stuff. So, yeah. So, I think there are, Europe has a trademark search database or something probably too, overall, I mean, and maybe even, let's see, Australia. I'm going to type this in. I don't know what their site looks like. Australia trademark search. Let's see. So, yeah, they have sites for, for checking that, online. Yeah. So you want to be, very careful, wherever you go. But there are sites, where you can check, in your in your country or region. There are there are trademark search engines and stuff, but be very careful again. I'd always recommend consulting someone who's like, a professional or legal expert, especially, it can be messy. Again, a lot of lawsuits happen over names. So when you're choosing the name of a publication or lit mag or journal that you're really going to, sit in, for long term, be very cautious, and there are, like with Dippity, I was searching, Dippity Timeline used to exist. They were a timeline company though. And then there are a few other companies called Dippity, and they specialize in different things though, right? And then there's I think I came across a place, Dippity.k, a year or two in, I was just searching online, and I think they're based in Africa. There was some publication. They're focusing on something else though. And I don't know if they're still around. And there are some other, Dippy related places. There are a lot of places out there that, in terms of when you're choosing a name, right? I think an example is like Taco Bell Quarterly, right? I'm just using them as an example. So, right, we all know Taco Bell exists, right? Taco Bell is a fast food chain, right? And tons of other ones exist. So Taco Bell Quarterly, there's I think that's fun, so it's not like you can't create an inspired name off of something that exists, right? In terms of if it's a restaurant and you're a literary arts publication, right, and you're doing a spin-off for fun, a community spin-off publication series, whether it be online or print. So you want to be very careful with names, because I would say, if you're using a name that, is very closely related to a large company or organization, very well known, obviously they may see that or take legal action because they may want you to stop using, they can do cease and desist letters and stuff, but, just be very careful, it's only polite and appropriate to write, be mindful about that, names that are being used, and by places that have been established, for a very long time. If you're going to go through the trademark process, I'd say be absolutely certain you are sure this name is one you want to go down the route. And, there are certain things you have to do to get, you go through the application process, right? They have to review it, examine what you're trademarking for, your name and stuff tied to, I mentioned goods or services, and things like that. So literary arts, that would be, I guess, literary arts publication. And, so online and print. So there are a bunch of, fees, associated with things like that, so, you have to, if you're going to go through with it, just know that it's going to cost money to do the trademark process, obviously. And I was seeing, within, under $2,000, that's what I think, but who knows? Because I didn't go through for that personal project. It wasn't a literary arts project or anything like that, or anything in the publication space. It was more of a personal artistry thing I was doing in my spare time. And I ended up dropping it because it's not something I wanted to, lose, $1,000 to $2,000 over, at the time, because I was also running Dippity, and I was like, maybe I want to, maybe do it. Yeah, and you can, do the process, you don't have to do the trademark right away, the process, but you can do it later on, and once you've, established yourself in the space, you totally could. You just want to make sure no one else is, using the same name as you. I think it can get really messy, legal matters, lawsuits, so you want to be super cautious about that. But yeah, it's totally fun to create a lit mag journal name. Be creative, be original, have fun with it, I really like seeing the names of all the lit mags and journals. They have some really cool, fun names. Always bring a smile to my face, yeah. Something I mentioned this on the podcast, I saw some do, or they recommended, create a list of names, side by side, or things that you're passionate about or love, and put them side by side in columns, and then, combine those names together, and then you can create a name, a unique name for your literary magazine or journal. Some literary magazines, journals, publishing houses are named after someone who maybe passed away, or a loved one, or someone, a very close friend or family, like their last name even. I've seen that. And or a shortened name or a nickname of someone, and of course it, not used in that space. But yeah, think about it. Take some time, take some time when you're coming up with the name of your publication, Literary Magazine Journal, or anything in your life, right? If you're going to start, let's say, a company for your artwork or a journal, or, not journal, but, an art project, or, a studio even, or something, and you want to have some legal protection over the name in that space, the trademark registration process, there's, various aspects of it, attributes, and some terminology on the various types of trademarks, right? So again, you want to read up on it, do research. I always recommend going straight to the website of wherever you're based, or for us in the US, it's the USPTO. I'm not very knowledgeable about the process beyond the US or anything like that, and stuff like that. So yeah, so again, you can usually see, the little TM, right, by name or something to know that they are, trademarking that, or, maybe going through the process or something, or have gone through it. So you want to be mindful about that. And then, of course, there's other symbols, right, by name. So I think we see the R and stuff. And yeah, so just know that exists, right? You can trademark. I just want to share this very quickly on this podcast. You just know that you can trademark the name of your literary magazine journal, or, whatever you do. Initially, I learned about the trademarking process by, I almost started my own ice cream business at one point when I was little. I had an idea for a juice business and some other ones, but I was more so going towards the ice cream one. I had bought containers. I had looked up, how to get nutrition labels created, all of that, vegan, organic. I'm not vegan per se, but, my fam ate a lot of mix between vegan and non-vegan foods. My dad was really fond of vegan ice creams and stuff, so I came up with this vegan maple syrup chocolate ice cream. It took me so many tries to get the recipe right and stuff. And I, eventually got one really phenomenal attempt at it, and, wanted to run with it. I was always inspired, I think at the time when I was younger, I would watch a lot of Shark Tank, a lot of, inventors, shows, Dragon's Den. I think that was the UK version of it and stuff. So I was really in tune to that at the time. But then, my parents were saying, talking about, the legal aspects of it, the logistics, also, expenses. And I wasn't, I didn't have a job at the time. I was, about to enter, a few years after, or very close to entering, college, university. I was still doing classes and stuff, and, working. After that, I did get a job a bit after that. I started working at 19, and, I put all the ideas I had on the back burner for things I wanted to do, that way, or ideas I had, and especially my artwork and poetry, right? I didn't start back up writing. After 2014, I took a break from poetry quite a bit, and I did mostly art projects and stuff. And, and I started, writing poetry again and stuff back in 2021. And, so there was a huge gap there. And, so anyways, I wanted to cover this because it had come up also in my email, with a publication that I followed from my home state. It happens from time to time. Some lit magazine journals run into legal disputes with places that start using their name and trying to do, identical to what they're doing in the space, and that's going to cause a conflict, often a lawsuit or cease and desist letters. So be careful. This shouldn't scare you, totally have fun again creating your name of your lit magazine journal. Just do some searching. Take some time, set aside if you're starting your lit magazine journal to look at what names are in use, cover all the bases, right? Social media platforms, some of the online Substack. A lot of publications are solely on Substack and Medium too, so you want to check there. And you want to check, some of the directories that exist for, poetry magazines and presses, Chill Subs, Poets and Writers. I mentioned some other places. Not everything's going to show up right at the top of the search engine, so you want to make sure, check the USPTO, check whichever, trademark search database, is for your, country or region. Be mindful about that so you don't run into issues down the road. And you can totally, if you start a publication and say, hey, I want to try filing for my trademark now. I feel like I'm very confident about this name. I want to go forward with it. And, yeah. So you want to make sure, again, it's a very distinct, unique, creative name. And again, there's other factors, first usage, how long it's been used by you, and other stuff at the time. And yeah, you want to just be careful, take the measures, if you intend on sticking with this publication, that you're creating, or long term, and you're 1,000% certain, go for it. It's always good to, I think, take precautions in, when it comes to, legal wise, to do that. Of course, it's going to take some money out of your pocket, but I think in the long run, it's worth it to take protective measures, and do that. So, perhaps I will, who knows, circle back to that personal project I did. I mean, I still have quite a few projects, and stuff that I left on the back burner, but, I can always start the process back up and stuff, and circle back to it, because, at the time I was going through a lot of stuff, so I just had to drop it and stuff. So, yeah. And, but you can totally do it. You don't have to do it the very first month you're starting your thing. You can, maybe wait a little bit, and, once you've gotten situated a little bit and stuff, just be very careful about, and aware, if others are using, your name. You want to, do some search results and stuff. You want to check existing Substacks, check social media. I'm just reiterating this because it's important, but yeah. So I hope this helped you. I wanted to touch base on it because it does come up. There are, actually, lawsuits that happen in the publication world, sometimes over something like names and other factors, of course, that maybe I'll cover in other episodes tied to like royalties. There's a lot of like lawsuits over royalties, payments to authors, things like that. So you want to be careful. There are risks associated with starting anything, yeah. So just be cautious, and don't worry a ton though. Have fun. That's the important thing. Running a lit mag journal. It's about sharing the work of others. Really, trying to spotlight writers, and yeah, it's a really fun and beautiful space, the lit mag world. So, it just is something you should be aware of, that you can do the trademark registration process for a name you're using. For, a series or something, or, whatever it may be, it could be something, even this could apply, just to something you're doing. Some people trademark, workshop names. Again, some people, trademark shows that they're doing, and stuff like that. So you just want to be aware of that, right? You want to make sure, in the space that you're doing it, no one else is using that name, or it's not already taken, because it's going to cause some messiness, right? It can get nasty. It can. A lot of people sue others over things, so you want to, be careful, and, some people have to stop using a name because others, they weren't aware that someone else had used it before them beforehand. And, so just be careful. Yeah. Always helps to get that additional legal protection, to consult a legal expert. It could be an attorney, a lawyer, or someone. If you have a loved one that has, legal advice, or is familiar with the process, or, anyone really who has a business or something, maybe could reach out to them. But always good to consult a professional. Don't fall for scams. Don't fall for, any, there's a lot of con artists, places out there, that'll take your money and ghost you. So you want to make sure you go straight to the source, right? As I say, same thing applies, in the space today. I'll just share with you guys. I know sometimes I talk about things outside the lit mag world and stuff, but so much scamming happening, of job applications and stuff too, like others, imitate others, and then they ghost you and they try to steal your information and stuff. So you want to be very, very cautious when you're doing anything that involves, money, right? And filing fees and all of that. You want to make sure you go straight to the source. Like I go, like when applying for jobs, and stuff like that. Typically it's always best to go to the website of the workplace or organization. And there's been an increase in like LinkedIn job scams, Indeed, fake postings and stuff. So yeah, it is very tough. So a lot of fake websites out there as well, for any space and things. So always make sure you're on, going through a legit trusted source. Check out uspto.gov, learn more about the trademark registration process. They have a list of questions. They have tables covering, why you should trademark, what's a trademark. It covers the different, aspects of it, and also covers copyright and stuff like that, has a lot of great examples out there so you can, learn more about it. I don't have extensive knowledge on it, obviously, but I want to take time to share it because I did look into it myself and went through the process a little bit in the past for something else. So this may help you, or something to think about in the future, if you come across this episode or series. So just know it is an option on the table for you in the lit mag world, or, as a press or journal, to trademark your name or go through the registration process. Yeah. So yeah, take care, guys. Bye. Have awesome days ahead. We'll think of some other topics to discuss, both in, the publisher side and the writing world, or as a writer. I think it's important to cover both sides of the fence so you understand, from like an editor, publisher perspective, and experiences sharing there, and also on the writer's side, things to think about or to look at, doesn't hurt to share. So if any of these episodes help you, feel free, to comment on any of them. That helps me. If you have a question, I'll do my best to try and see it. Feel free to, and I can try and discuss it or something like that, or do an episode around it. Feel free to do that, and I'll try. If you have feedback for me, totally. I think I was talking a little bit fast on this episode because I was short on time, just a heads up. But there are some spaces where you can, slow down audio in the podcast and stuff. So, yeah, gotta go. So take care, yeah. Take care. Promise. Bye now. Bye. And, so one more thing, I promise, one more thing, and then I'll say goodbye. So, yeah, I just remembered that in my email, I think I was on, because I think I'd submitted to them at some point in time, which is probably why I was on the email, Conduit, it was Conduit Books. So they've been around for a long time. I think it says on their website, the last time I checked, they were celebrating, their 25th anniversary in 2018. So they've been around a very long time. And they're based out of my home state, Minnesota, I think out of St. Paul. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And, so the thing that's going on, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it looks like someone has started using Conduit Books in the UK. And so that's a conflict now, because they're doing, literary fiction. It looks like they're doing book publications or trying to start that or something. Anyways, it sounds like they are establishing a legal fund and are, doing cease and desist letters, and are trying to, get them to stop using that name. So I'm just using them an example since that actually came up recently. And it just goes to show, there can be things like that happening in the lit mag world, and, journals and, publication houses and stuff. So, I hope, they get that addressed and everything. I'm sure they will. Conduit Books, that's a trademark registered, Conduit Books and Ephemera too, Also sometimes, lit mag journals, presses, they have multiple names, trademark registered. And again, a lot of places don't undergo the trademark registration process. And, that doesn't give someone, if someone's been using a name for like, a couple years, 10, 20, so forth, right? And someone out of the blue starts using that name, obviously, eventually you're going to see that it's going to cause a conflict, some sort of legal dispute, so it's only, of course, appropriate and, for someone to, not use the same name as you in the space, right? So you want to be very careful about your name selection, because, again, it can end up in the legal matters and stuff like that. And, So, I again, hope they get that addressed. I'm sure they will. They've been around quite some time, and they have their trademark registration and stuff. So, it's tough, name selection again, but, just double check, before, finalizing that name, do some research and stuff, before picking one out. and settling on it. And yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. And yeah, be sure to check out conduit.org. They're really awesome. CONDUIT, conduit.org. And yeah, they are, I believe, a biannual literary journal. And then they also have like a, aside from the magazine, they have a book series and other things. And yeah, very cool. And yeah, so check them out, conduit.org. And based in Minnesota, St. Paul, not the, there's a one that popped up, called Conduit Books in the UK, so they're trying to, get that to stop. So yeah, so that's all I wanted to mention, and give that example, since I was talking about it earlier, and I was trying to recall the details of it. And yeah. And yeah, I know earlier I said I wasn't going to give names and stuff, but yeah, I wanted to just share that example, as I hadn't recalled the details at the time, but I was just taking the time to pull that up and read about it again. So yeah, take care again. Have awesome days ahead. I think I'm losing my voice a little bit here. So, there might be breaks between, any new episodes for a while, and I have a couple other things, coming up. But yeah, be sure to check out some of the, articles I typed out online and stuff, on Substack and stuff. I'm doing some pros and cons list again, some outlines, not for every episode, just when I can. It's predominantly, an audio series, and then I'm gonna do some spin-off, spotlight stuff too, and some coverage of some other things too, down the road eventually. Just getting some things settled with Dippity Lit Mag and some projects we're working on, and some remaining things for our move to Subfolio. We're not quite on the new submission management system. Just an update for you guys, but we're almost there, almost off of submittables. So I'll maybe do a follow-up episode on that, or just mention it in a episode, how things are going, on it and stuff down in the future. So yeah, take care now. Bye, guys. Sorry, I know I tack on a lot of PS notes and lie about when the episode ends, right? Totally. So bye, yeah.